Good morning, everyone. I know I've been a little bit behind with my reading, but I'm back. It's Friday, May 22nd. It's about noon o'clock. I'm on my deck, enjoying the sunshine. I'm going to continue reading Hoot. This is chapter 5. Roy zipped through his homework in an hour. When he came out of his room, he heard his mother talking to his father on the phone. She was saying that Trace Middle had decided not to take disciplinary action against Dana Matherson because of his injuries. Apparently, the school didn't want to provoke Dana's parents in case they were considering a lawsuit. When Mrs. Eberhardt began telling Mr. Eberhardt about the wild tussle between Dana and his mother, Roy slipped out the back door. He wheeled his bicycle from the garage and rode off. 20 minutes later, he arrived at Beatrice Leap's bus stop, and from there he easily retraced Friday's ill-fated foot chase. When Roy got to the golf course, he locked his bike to the pipes of a water fountain and set off jogging down the same fairway where he'd gotten clobbered. It was late in the afternoon, steamy hot, and a few golfers were out. Nonetheless, Roy ran with his head down and one arm upraised for deflection, in case another errant ball came flying in his direction. He slowed only when he reached the stand of Australian pines into which the running boy had vanished. The pine trees gave way to a tangled thicket of Brazilian peppers and dense ground scrub, which looked impenetrable. Roy scoured the fringes, looking for a trail or some human sign. He didn't have much time before it would get dark. Soon he gave up trying to locate an entry point and elbowed his way into the pepper trees, which scraped his arms and poked his cheeks. He shut his eyes and thrashed onward. Gradually, the branches thinned and the ground beneath him began to slope. He lost his balance and went sliding down a ditch that ran like a tunnel through the thicket. There, in the shadows, the air was cool and earthy. Roy spotted a series of charred rocks encircling a layer of ashes, a campfire. He knelt by the small pit and studied the packed dirt around it. He counted half a dozen identical impressions, all made by the same set of bare feet. Roy placed his own shoe beside one of the prints and wasn't surprised to see they were about the same size. On a whim, he called out, "Hello? You there?" No answer. Slowly, Roy worked his way along the ditch, hunting for more clues. Concealed beneath a mat of vines, he found 3 plastic garbage bags, each tied at the neck. Inside the first bag was common everyday trash: soda bottles, soda cans, potato chip wrappers, apple cores. The second bag held a stack of boys' clothing, neatly folded t-shirts, blue jeans, underpants. But no socks or shoes, Roy observed. Unlike the other bags, the third one wasn't full. Roy loosened the knot and peeked, but he couldn't see what was inside. Whatever it was felt bulky. Without thinking, he turned the bag over and dumped the contents on the ground. A pile of thick brown ropes fell out. Then the ropes began to move. "Uh-oh," Roy said. Snakes. And not just any old snakes. They had broad, triangular heads like the prairie rattlers back in Montana, but their bodies were muck-colored and ominously plump. Roy recognized the snakes as common-mouth moccasins, highly poisonous. They carried no rattles to warn in advance of a strike, but Roy saw that the tips of their stubby tails had been dipped in blue and silver sparkles, the kind used in art projects. It was a most peculiar touch. Roy struggled to remain motionless while the fat reptiles untangled themselves at his feet. Tongues flicking, some of the moccasins extended to their full lengths while others coiled sluggishly. Roy counted 9 in all. "This isn't good," he thought. He almost leapt out of his sneakers when a voice spoke out from the thicket behind him. "Don't move," the voice commanded. "I wasn't planning to," Roy said. "Honest." When he lived in Montana, Roy once hiked up Pine Creek Trail into the Absaroka Range, which overlooks Paradise Valley and the Yellowstone River. It was a school field trip with 4 teachers and about 30 kids. Roy had purposely dropped to the rear of the line, and when the others weren't looking, he peeled away from the group. Abandoning the well-worn path, he angled back and forth up the side of a wooded ridge. His plan was to cross over the top and quietly sneak down ahead of the school hikers. He thought it would be funny if they trudged into the campsite and found him napping by the creek. Hurriedly, Roy made his way through a forest of towering log pole pines. The slope was littered with brittle dead logs and broken branches, the debris of many cold, windy winters. Roy stepped gingerly to avoid making noise, for he didn't want the hikers down below to hear him climbing. As it turned out, Roy was too quiet. He walked into a clearing and found himself facing a large grizzly bear with two cubs. It was impossible to say who was more startled. Roy had always wanted to see a grizzly in the wild, but his buddies at school told him to dream on. Maybe in Yellowstone Park, they said, but not up here. Most grown-ups spent their whole lives out west without ever laying eyes on one. Yet there was Roy, and 100 feet across the glade were three serious bears, snorting, huffing, rising on their hind legs to scope him out. Roy remembered that his mother had packed a canister of pepper spray in his backpack. But he also remembered what he'd read about bear encounters. The animals had poor eyesight, and the best thing for a human to do was to remain perfectly still and silent.